and I try to kill a boss, and I can't kill it. Then what I
Normalize Diablo like.
Jesus Christ, this is black. Sorry. To allow you to defeat that boss. So that was something that we it's not an obvious connection between, like, how come people are finding bosses frustrating to like being, we need to improve the map. But like that ended up, I sort of realized that, like, why is it different between these different games? And I think that was very important. So adding that has actually improved the experience, I think, quite a lot.
Yeah.
Jesus,
You get
what? Just go away. Okay.
Oh man.
Jesus Christ. Go away.
Somebody get a fly swatter.
I wonder if we can.
Okay. So anyway, what was I saying?
Immediately was like, dude, this is like a singularity of ARPGness. This is D2 again 20 years later. Like, it's happened. They finally did it. That's what it felt like when I saw it. 24 years ago, Blizzard North, emphasis on North, launched Diablo 2, and it changed how people think about video games. It captured people's imaginations, inspired other developers, and paved the way for an entire genre of isometric ARPGs. It was as big a deal as Mario, Zelda, Final Fantasy, Dark Souls, or Grand Theft Auto. Think about how many other games have copied the systems and designs of those games. A lot. Yeah, Diablo 2 is up there in its influence. What made Diablo 2 so special was that it had the entire package. The aesthetic was gritty and dark. The voice acting was unlike any other game in terms of professionalism and quality of that time. Listen to some of these voice lines from the year 2000.
My duty here is done. Evil dwells within this cave.
Andario, your reign is over. Now I can leave this twisted nightmare.
The sound effects were believable and memorable. You would never forget the sound of a demon saying, "Revelation." Or how about,
"Not even death can save you from me."
Or how about the aura effects from a paladin skill? So iconic. Dude, these sounds are awesome and really make up a lot of the experience, especially in your formative years. The cinematics at the time were mind-blowing. We couldn't even imagine that games today could play with better graphics than the cinematics we saw back then. It was inconceivable. The music for Diablo 2 is easily one of the best soundtracks to any video game ever made because of how it helps set the tone for the entire experience. The character classes are varied and memorable. The build design is quite expansive. I showcased about 60 builds on my channel, and I have a bunch more that I never got around to making videos for, which would make about 90 builds probably. And the itemization is top-level game design. Diablo 2 resurrected the remaster of Diablo 2, reinvigorated all of that greatness with a fresh coat of paint, quality of life changes, and balance patches, reminding me why Diablo 2 has been one of the greatest games of all time all along. And so many other game companies have come along, grasping their bottles, trying to capture that proverbial lightning once again.
Chris, he was actually the one who sort of suggested, look, what we need to be doing is making a sequel to Diablo 2. I obviously loved Diablo 2 as well. You know what I mean? Like, I'd played it a huge amount earlier, but Chris was still deep in Diablo 2. You know what? Like, there hasn't been a game that got the whole formula right for a really long time. Here's just a game that was still selling, by the way. Like, people were still selling physical copies of Diablo 2.
Yep.
Like, it might have been like 10 years later or something like that. There was still game was still selling like hotcakes. And it's like, okay,
It's still good today.
no one's made like a true successor to this thing. Why the hell, like, are we not the ones doing this?
More than 10 years ago, we had a dream to make the best action RPG ever.
Made with all the lessons we learned from Here We Won, and with the passion from our talented team, we believe Path of Exile 2 is the realization of that dream.
I think the isometric ARPG formula matters so much because it's how a lot of us spent our childhood. Yeah, a lot of us played Diablo 2, but even before that, we were playing with action figures and figurines and painting models and stuff, coming up with our own fantasies and games. And when you played with those characters and those figurines and stuff, the viewpoint was isometric, wasn't it? And so a game like Diablo was very nostalgic right away. It made sense to a young boy. They're creating something that is so sophisticated, and its systems are so creative and deep that as an adult, you get to play make-believe again. I just want to do a quick visual comparison to a lot of other isometric ARPGs that have come out. I just want you to notice that when it comes to dark, gritty feel and atmosphere, really nothing has done it like Diablo 2 has, except now Path of Exile 2. So let's look at the character select and a little bit of gameplay from these other isometric ARPGs. So you can see we have Torchlight. Torchlight is super cartoony, right? And the combat is clunky looking now by today's standards, right? There's all that screen shake. Here's Diablo 2 Resurrected's character select, and here is the legacy mode for the old version. And then you can see some gameplay of Diablo 2 Resurrected right here. And it looks gothic. There's incredibly great shadows and lighting and depth, and I like the camera angle. Okay, and then here's some Path of Exile 1. And this one, I would say, is very good. It looks grim, it looks dark, but it's still a little cartoony. And then when the combat comes in, you can see it does look a little cartoony, does look a little flat, lacks a bit of depth, kind of washed out looking in my opinion. Here's Diablo 3, very cartoony. It looks kind of like Warcraft or World of Warcraft. Once again, here's some gameplay. We're looking flat on the visuals and the depth and the shadows, kind of blocky. Grim Dawn has a nice atmosphere to its character select, I'd say. Its gameplay is also kind of cartoony, though, and a little bit blocky and clunky. Here is Last Epoch's character select. I think their character select is done well, but it's also very cartoony. The gameplay is also very colorful and cartoony. And so out of all those, I would say Diablo 2 Resurrected has the best character select in terms of style and atmosphere, and the best looking graphics for gameplay in terms of depth and contrast, shadows. Okay, now here is Diablo 4's character select. I'd say looks pretty good. Dark, very grim. I like the campfire, lots of contrast there. Character models look pretty sweet too, actually. I'd say out of everything we've seen so far, it's as good, if not better, than Diablo 2 Resurrected in terms of capturing the dark atmosphere of a ARPG that you would come to expect. Now here, once again, I'm just seeing, lack of depth, not great shadow. It looks a little bit blocky and cartoony, kind of like some of these other games. It's not horrible, like it looks all right, but when I look at Diablo 2 Resurrected and Path of Exile 2, those games just have a certain atmosphere and aesthetic that is more in line with what I come to expect for a dark, gritty ARPG story. I don't like things like that, like where it says dodge and stuff like that. I'm not a fan of that, really. The verticality is nice, I'd say, for Diablo 4. Now let's look at Path of Exile 2's character select. This is by far the best character select that's ever been made for an ARPG. They all get hung except the character you choose. Absolutely genius, brilliant, dark, gritty, gets you right into the action. It's kind of shocking too. In terms of the gameplay, it has incredible color, but also incredible depth and shadows, grittiness, impact. I mean, it's got everything. It's completely the best looking one by far. In order to understand how impactful Diablo is, let me go through some of the sales numbers. According to Game Rant from a 2021 article, it says that Diablo, the first one, sold 2.5 million copies. It goes on to say that Diablo 2 sold 4 million copies. And I found another article that said Diablo 2, the expansion, Lord of Destruction, sold over 1 million copies back in 2001, which is a year after the launch. If we look further to Diablo 2 Resurrected, the remaster, that sold 5 million copies in less than 7 months. So if we're just guesstimating on some numbers here, we're talking about 10 million copies of Diablo 2, either the original or the remaster, and not even talking about anything in between or up until right now. So there could be easily 12, maybe there's 12 million copies sold, 15 million, I don't know. Now here's something even more insane, if you didn't know. Diablo 3 sold 30 million copies. Okay? 30 million. And for more context, Diablo 4, it says, sold about 10 million copies from a basic, Google search. So, what do we make of these numbers? It seems like Diablo 3 is the greatest Diablo game based on the numbers. If you're a bureaucrat, if you're a businessman, if you're an investor, you're going to want more of Diablo 3, right? Well, hold on. Here's what I think happened. I think Diablo and Diablo 2 were so damn good that the hype level for Diablo 3 was unimaginable. And so it sold like crazy based on all of the genius and success of Diablo 2. We had tons of ARPGs come out, all looking blocky, cartoony, and kind of like Warcraft and stuff, all trying to capitalize on the Diablo 3 formula, right? But the reason Diablo 3 was so successful, in my opinion, is because of Diablo 2. And that's why it's so exciting to hear the devs at Grinding Gear Games talk so fondly of Diablo 2 when they're marketing Path of Exile 2. Here's a picture of a dev at Grinding Gear Games working on Path of Exile 2.
If you think back to, say, Diablo 2, which obviously still holds a lot of, power in terms of design motivations and philosophy and stuff within the company.
In Diablo 2, there's a man named Deckard Cain that you have to save. In order to save him, you have to come upon a magic tree that gives you an item that allows you to break the runic magic so you can get back to Tristram. There you'll find Deckard Cain hanging in a cage from a wooden post. After saving him, he acts as a sort of guide for you and also will identify all items. In Path of Exile 2, there is the Hooded One, who you also have to save. You find him at a magical tree with runic magic caging him there or binding him there. Once you go on a quest to find what you need to break the runic magic, he comes down from his quote-unquote cage and then acts as a guide to you and also will identify items for you. In both cases, you've got trees, runes, a hooded figure who identifies items for you that needs saving, who's a guide for you as well. I love how much that kind of rhymes. You could almost call it typological. And here's an image from the trailer. You can see that the Hooded One is being bound to the tree with this runic magic. And this to me is just really cool because you can see the runes in the sword. Reminds me of a rune word from Diablo 2. But Jonathan did say that while runes are in the game as socketable items, rune words are not in the game for Path of Exile 2. Still a cool little callback to Diablo 2. There are immunities in Path of Exile 2, but only if you choose to engage them in some of the endgame content. You have to choose this. So this says monsters are immune to fire damage here in this expedition mechanic. Diablo 2 is well known for having immunities and especially a lot of fire immunes. Thought that was kind of funny. And much like history repeating itself, Diablo 2 did not release with the Druid or the Assassin. Those were part of the expansion. And Path of Exile 2 will not have the druid or the assassin/shadow, but they will be added during the course of the early access. Thought that was kind of interesting as well. And so the layout is very reminiscent of Diablo 2. I really love it. The item slots are pretty much exactly the same too. The inventory is a 12 by 5, whereas in Diablo 2 it's a 10 by 5. There are charms. You have a few slots in your belt for them, and they do offer effects. In Diablo 2, you have to put all the charms in your inventory, and it really sucks because it kind of acts almost like a paragon system in Diablo 2, where you can enhance certain things for your character, but then you have no room to pick things up, and it's quite annoying. I'll be looking forward to not having to deal with that in Path of Exile 2. But so yeah, charms are in the game in Path of Exile 2 in the form of trinkets that you put in your belt, and there are socketable items like runes that you can place in your gear as well. You can choose any skill you want in Path of Exile as long as you have the requirements. But if you want to follow a path, you can follow the skill tree that they have set up to guide you. Jonathan Rogers has said that the skill tree system in Path of Exile 2 was completely inspired by Diablo 2. You can see in the Diablo 2 skill tree, and they are tiered in terms of level. In Path of Exile 2, they also are tiered. This guy's from Diablo 2, this guy's from Path of Exile. This is Corpse Explosion in Diablo 2, and this is Detonate Dead in Path of Exile 2. They both do physical and fire damage. Here is a graveyard with a mausoleum in Act 1. Here's another graveyard with a mausoleum in Act 1. Here's the Clearfell encampment in Act 1. Here's the Rogue encampment in Act 1. Here's the desert atmosphere of Act 2. And here's also the desert atmosphere of Act 2. Here's the jungle area of Act 3, and wouldn't you know it, the jungle area of Act 3. Very similar cadence and instrumentation. No, 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 no. No, 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 no. Right? It's so similar. In Diablo 2, the barbarian can wield two-handers in one hand, but only swords. In Path of Exile 2, there's a notable Giant's Blood, where you can wield two-handed axes, maces, and swords in one hand. In Diablo 2, one of the endgame grinds is to do a Holy Grail, where you find every unique item in the game, but you have to keep track of this kind of just yourself, like on a spreadsheet or something, or a third-party website. In Path of Exile 2, you can get a stash tab that keeps track of all your uniques. Absolutely genius. In Diablo 2, the max character limit online is 24 per account, and you only get 3 shared stash tabs. In Path of Exile 2, the default number of characters you can start is 24, but you can get up to 255 character slots with microtransactions. And you can buy pretty much as many stash tabs as you want. So what did you think? I mean, I could go on and on about more similarities and things like that, but I feel like this is a good place to call it. We're almost to the early access on December 6th. Please like the video, share the video, and subscribe to the channel. I'll be doing sweet off meta builds. I'm going to leave you now with some words of wisdom from bigger content creators and a really fun send-off from one of Jonathan's showcases. All right, thanks.
Don't min-max the fun out of the game. I think this is an opportunity for you to go in and actually try to enjoy a game.
It's shaded in that direction. Yeah, off meta is the way. Yeah.
Do you have any other questions about the game or anything else you'd like to know? We can.
I just want to keep playing.
Fair enough. Fair enough. We can keep playing.
This is so fun.